About 100 years ago, the philosopher Rabindranath Tagore wrote these words: "Comrade of the open road, here are my traveler's greetings to you. Friend of my broken heart, of leave-taking and loss, of the gray silence of dayfall, my greetings of the broken house to you. Light of the newborn morning, sun of the everlasting day, my greetings of undying hope to you. My friend, I am a wayfarer on an endless road, my greetings of a wanderer to you." The line that immediately jumped out at me was, of course, "My greetings of the broken house to you." Ever since I read John Lewis's essay, I've been thinking about shaky, broken houses. My own house, which is the only non-newly built home I have ever lived in, seemed a bit shaky when we first moved in about 2 years ago. The main water line broke on New Year's Eve. You know, no one works on New Year's Eve. The toilets often backed up and leaked, and there are still major cracks in the tile that I have just chosen to ignore. Most houses have their vulnerabilities, their shaky spots. Our church home was inundated by floodwaters not that long ago. Who would have thought it here in the desert? Yes, to some extent, we all live in shaky houses, vulnerable to lightning and flood, fire and wind, and leaky pipes. We live in shaky bodies, bodies which are aging and perhaps aging more rapidly than we are prepared for, bodies which get illnesses and are more fragile than we like to admit. And of course, we live in shaky times. The war in Iraq seems to drag on forever. And the violence in Syria is escalating and ongoing. The stories this past year from Ferguson, Missouri and Baltimore, Maryland have revealed things about poverty and injustice in our very own country that are still with us. We live in shaky times. But back to Tagore's poem. When he wrote, "My greetings of the broken house to you," I think he might have been referring to himself as a broken house. I believe we are, if we make it as far as adulthood, all broken houses. I really don't intend that in any derogatory way. To be a broken house can be a beautiful thing. This is because living in this world with passion and intensity and depth necessarily means having knowledge of leave-taking and loss. To live in this world is to know brokenheartedness, if not for ourselves, then for the sake of others. To be a broken house means that we have experienced what Tagore calls the gray silence of dayfall. It means that we have been weathered and are still standing to see the light of a newborn morning. It means we have found strength. But seldom do we find that strength alone. I believe that is at least one reason that we gather here on Sunday mornings. We have a glimmer of knowing that to be fully human is to acknowledge our fragility. I believe we come because we know we must learn to live with the truth of our vulnerability and understand on some level that our vulnerability can paradoxically help make us strong. I believe that we come because we know we live in broken houses, that we are broken houses, but that in community, however imperfect, we can still be whole. We can hold hands, find strength, move to that corner where we are needed, and make a difference. In the Jewish calendar, after Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, in the early fall, there comes here at the end of September a harvest festival called Sukkoth. Sukkoth involves the building of a little temporary house, a sukkah. People build these shelters in their backyards, or they might join with other families and build them in a park or outside the synagogue. The point is to make a little hut, a little house out of poles or boards with a roof made out of leafy branches. You can decorate it or put in a chair where you can drink your morning coffee or have a meal. Usually these shelters, these sukkah, are pretty flimsy, pretty rickety. And that is the whole point. You are outside and sheltered, yet open to the weather and to the neighbors walking by. Rabbi Arthur Waskow, who is a progressive and activist rabbi, wrote a powerful essay after September 11th titled The Sukkah of Shalom. In this essay, he says, in 2001, just a few weeks after the 9/11 attacks, the Jewish community celebrated the harvest festival of Sukkoth. Many did so by building a sukkah, a fragile hut with a leafy roof, the most vulnerable of houses. Vulnerable in time, since it lasts only for a week each year. Vulnerable in space, since its roof need not only be leafy, but leaky enough to let in the starlight and the gusts of wind and rain. Rabbi Waskow continues by describing a prayer that many observant Jews say before bed each night. The prayer includes these words: God, spread over us your sukkah of shalom, your sukkah, your fragile shelter of peace and safety. And then he asks, why does the prayer plead for a sukkah of shalom rather than a temple or a fortress or a palace of shalom, which would surely be more safe and secure? He answers his own question this way: precisely because the sukkah is so vulnerable. For much of our lives, we try to achieve peace and safety by building with steel and concrete and toughness. Pyramids, air raid shelters, pentagons, World Trade Centers. But the sukkah reminds us that we are, in truth, all vulnerable. And on 9/11, 2001, that ancient truth came home. We all live in a sukkah. Even the widest oceans, the mightiest buildings, the wealthiest balance sheet, the most powerful weapons did not shield us. The planet is, in fact, an interwoven web of life. The sukkah not only invites our minds to become more vulnerable to new ideas and our bodies to recognize their vulnerability, but also the sukkah, as the Jewish tradition teaches, would tell us to leave behind not only the rigid walls and towers of our cities, but also our rigid ideas, our assumptions, our habits, our accustomed lives. Washkow ends his essay with these words: "Whatever we build where the tall twin towers once stood, America and the world will be living in a leafy, leaky, shaky sukkah." Hope comes from raising that simple truth to visibility. We must spread over all of us the sukkah of shalom. Our houses are shaky, but we are here together seeking to create peace and compassion and justice and simple kindness, seeking to keep our hearts and minds open to one another and to the possibilities of a new way of being in the world, seeking to create the beloved community in this time and in this place. As the story from John Lewis reminds us, the people of conscience never leave the shaky house. They never run away. They stay, they come together, and they do the best they can, joining hands and moving toward the corner of the house that is the weakest. And then another corner lifts, and we will go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm will settle. But we know another storm will come, and we will do it all over again. And we will, all of us, you and I. Children holding hands, walking with the wind, doing what we can to secure our shaky houses, doing what we can to spread the sukkah of shalom.
But it didn't start there. I want to thank Rebecca for sharing the pulpit with me this morning. It started with a miracle, and after the miracle came the grumbling. As the story goes, God had cleared the path for Moses to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. They thought all was lost there at the banks of the Red Sea, but in a miracle that has captured the imaginations of every generation since it was recorded, God parted the waters and allowed God's people to cross on dry ground. As soon as they reached the other shore, the waters came crashing down on the Egyptian soldiers, you've seen the story, who were chasing them, and there stood the Israelites, panting, safe on the other side of the sea, free and scared to death. Freedom usually sounds like the right idea, but it didn't take long for the Israelites to feel the burden that freedom always brings. The stinginess of the desert left them thirsty, and they stood there in the wilderness of Sin and took Moses to task. Why did you bring us here to die in the desert when we had it so good in Egypt? These stories are really about you and me, you know. Back in Egypt, they said we sat around full tables, we had plenty to eat, more than we could possibly eat, and now we and our livestock have nothing. We're all going to die, Moses, and it's all your fault. Moses was at his wit's end. He cried out, God, what do you want me to do with these people? They won't stop complaining. They're blaming me for everything. They're going to kill me. The miracle of the Red Sea must have seemed a generation ago. In the end, the people received what they needed, and they were well. Miracles are often followed by grumbling. It seems it's deep in human nature, this penchant for forgetting too quickly. We need new things. We need to build a new freeway or construct a new subdivision, get a new car, find new friends. When we seem to continually ask, when will we get back to being happy? Freedom is nice, but we each know well the human tendency to forget our blessings. But there's another impulse, too, and it's at the heart of Sukkoth. this holiday centered on harvest and shelter, reminds us to look and see how good we really do have it. Look and see we're invited, that God provides, that the earth provides. There's enough for all of us. Enough food for the hungry, enough love to provide justice for all people. This is the most significant miracle of all. There is enough. There is a great deal to be grateful for. The ordinary, when we look at it in the right light, is something truly holy. A loaf of ordinary bread, a friend's smile, the joy of a child. And so after focusing months necessarily on repentance and forgiveness, our Jewish neighbors turn to praise for the provision of the holy, a ritual of gratitude for harvest, a holiday of joy. My colleague, Reverend Victoria Safford, expressed the following in a sermon on this holiday. We've got a great intellectual argument, we Unitarian Universalists, and a great noble history. But does it sing? Is it open to the stars? Can it show us how to lead our lives? Grateful, joyful, generous, moral, reverent lives. We've got a great tune. Urgent, essential, but can it convey the sorrow of the spirituals? The risky joy of jazz? The mathematical magic of Bach? The sweetness of a country western ballad that makes no sense at all? The blessed assurances of the old hymn tunes, the precision of a waltz, the wild erotic passion of the tango. You've got a great tune, theoretically, intellectually, but can we dance to it? She concludes, we need religion that's open, not closed, evolving, not finished, asking, not telling, wondering and not requiring conformity. Religion that moves to the rhythm of life, to the beat that sounds inside your chest from the day you're born until the day you die. The same song humanity has always sung in 1,000 different keys. That kind of faith has a chance at changing the world. A faith that realizes that there is so much. Yes, we have work to do. But we need to stop every once in a while and just marvel at the provision of the universe. Look up at a starry Arizona sky to see the blood moon tonight or tomorrow. Or take in an unbelievable desert sunset and remember that there is enough. From that conviction, social justice work becomes religious work. As we look to draw wider and wider the inclusive circle that Universalists have been widening for generations. Working to bring more and more people into the circle because there's plenty here for everyone. Social justice work becomes then work that begins not with fear, not even with earnestness, but with simple praise and gratitude. Our seventh principle reminds us that we're part of an interdependent circle with all of nature, every living thing. Let us take joy in that circle, that all our needs and more will be provided. There is enough. One day soon may everyone have enough. One day soon may all of us enjoy the full provision of the great welcome table. Amen.